West Indian Company focused on the transport of Africans, slave trading, pretty much behind sugar cane, fur, and cotton, and other resources as well, but those are the most prominent ones. So sit back and enjoy yourselves.
Guess who runs the United States? Everyone says, oh, it's the Rockefellers. It's the Collins family. Now, who are the Collins? Well, there's a fellow called Christopher Columbus, who in Spanish is called Cristobal Colon. He came from one of the papal families called the Colonna family, and they were the enemies of the Orsini family, who considered themselves to be the Maxima family. The Rothschilds and the Windsors come from the Orsini family. The Orsini and the Colonna were fighting in the Middle Ages to be popes. One pope finally comes along in history and says, right, you've got to stop this fighting amongst yourselves. He said, one of your family has to marry one of their family, and you have to make amends, and we have to make a papal bull, and we have to work together. And from then on, the Collins family becomes Columbia, District of Columbia, the Knights of Columbus, Columbia Pictures, British Columbia, Columbia in South America, and the Collins family still runs America. Thank you, Christopher Collins, otherwise known as Christopher Columbus.
1476, off the coast of Portugal. An Italian sailor, shipwrecked and left for dead by pirates. His name? Christopher Columbus. A dreamer who will unite a divided world. He believes he's been saved by God for a special purpose. His dream is inspired by a book written 200 years earlier, but thanks to the printing press has become a bestseller. After the Bible, the most widely read book in Europe, The Wonders of the World by Marco Polo. The epic story of a Venetian merchant in his travels east, through the Holy Lands, Central Asia, and on to the exotic teeming cities of China.
It is scarcely possible to set down in writing the magnificence of this province. Here they weave gold tissues, as well as every other kind of silk and cloth. The city contains merchants of great wealth and an incalculable number of people.
Columbus was a classic example of someone who really was inspired by literature and dreamed big.
He's possessed with this, kind of desire to win the lottery of life. He wanted to be the next Marco Polo.
Columbus's brother is a map maker. Together, they plot a revolutionary idea: to head east by traveling west. Not over land like Marco Polo, but by sea. Map makers at the time know nothing about the Americas. To them, this double continent doesn't exist. They believe there's a vast, uncrossable ocean between Europe and Asia. Columbus thinks they're wrong, that the world is smaller than they realize. And it's quite easy to sail from Europe to China.
When Columbus said, let's sail west, they had a picture of the Earth in their mind. They said, Are you crazy? No.
For almost a decade, Columbus tries to finance his crazy scheme. He's turned down by the rulers of Portugal, Venice, and Genoa.
At a Hanukkah celebration in 2018, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the popular Puerto Rican congresswoman from New York, surprised a small crowd by announcing that she has Jewish ancestry.
My family consisted of Sephardic Jews.
Later that same week, a groundbreaking study came out of Latin America. After testing DNA samples from 6,000 randomly selected people across the region, researchers found that 23% of them had at least 5% of their DNA from Spanish Jewish heritage. Back in 2015, the Spanish government announced that they'd grant citizenship to any non-Spaniards who could prove that they are descendants of Jews who were expelled from the country in the 15th century. By late 2019, Spain revealed that they had received 127,000 applications. The most popular countries? Mexico, Venezuela, and Colombia. All this points to one big question. Why do so many Latin Americans have Jewish heritage?
But Columbus is on a search for treasure.
I kept my eyes open and tried to find if there was any gold.
Columbus returns to Spain a hero. His journeys open the floodgates. Tenochtitlan, Mexico, heart of the Aztec Empire. 28 years after Columbus, the lust for gold is about to change the destiny of the New World. Through the ambitions of one man, Hernan Cortez. Devious, charming, and ruthless, leading a band of just 500 European adventurers.
Cortez was quite a manipulator and quite savvy. He knows how to motivate people, and the objective is gold, and that's what, of course, was the prime motivation.
Aztec Emperor Montezuma, the richest, most powerful man in the Americas, ruler of 25 million people. He's welcomed Cortez and his men into his palace, a mistake that will change the fate of a continent.
Their numbers were small. How could they constitute a threat when you have an army that's 1,000 times, 10,000 times larger than the few hundred souls that they brought, right?
Cortez's plan? Kidnap the emperor. Fighting for their lives, Cortez and his men barely escape, with a fortune in Aztec gold and silver. And leave behind a lethal time bomb.
The conquistadors are going to war with the Aztecs. But their biggest weapons aren't the ones they're carrying in their hands. It's the virus in their bodies. Smallpox. Unbeknownst to them, they bring it to battle.
6 months later, half the city is dead from smallpox. "11 months after his escape, Cortez returns. His victory complete. He's hijacked the mighty Aztec Empire. An empire of 25 million, brought down by just 500 men.
The Afro-Argentines are black immigrants from Africa who were enslaved in Argentina in the 18th century. Their large numbers formed a significant part of the Argentina population, but after a few years, their numbers decreased. In 1778, according to a census carried out by the Spanish Council, it was discovered that the Afro-Argentines were about 37% of Argentina's population. Many years later, they dropped to about 15% of the total population, and now Argentina is currently the whitest country in South America. Due to the limited population of the Afros, it's almost impossible to find them in notable careers such as sports, journalism, politics, and many more. Some were from Cape Verde Islands, while the majority were from ethnic groups speaking Bantu languages, from territories, which comprise Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Republic of Congo. There were a few Yoruba and Iwe. In the 1600s, according to an estimate, 12 million African slaves got to Latin America through slave ships. But while passing through the Atlantic, about 10 to 15% of the captured slaves died, and many more died during the process of enslavement while traveling through the interior part of Africa. There's a record of about 40 deaths for every 100 slaves who successfully reached the New World. Some of these black men were captured and taken to Buenos Aires, which is the capital of Argentina. Their main commercial activity at the time was trading slaves for money. The slaves were forced to work in agriculture, livestock, domestic activities, and crafts. A memorable feat was achieved when November 8 was assigned by the Argentine legislation to celebrate Maria Remedios del Val, the female Afro-Argentine soldier who fought for Argentina during the Argentine War of Independence in the 1800th century. But one thing is certain. White Argentina found it quite difficult to completely eradicate the black Argentines in its libraries, which is a good thing, most especially for the Afro-Argentines who had bravely fought for the country's freedom.
We've got to go back to the year 1492. Two huge historical events took place that year, and both had serious lasting consequences. First, Spain started to colonize the Americas. And second, back on their side of the Atlantic, the Spanish government enacted the Alhambra Decree, which forced Jews to either convert to Catholicism or leave the country for good. Spain had already been murdering or forcibly converting Jews for over a century. That was part of the Spanish Inquisition. But this was the final nail in the coffin. Now, Jews had only two options: get baptized or get out. Nobody knows exactly how many Jews chose the second option and fled. Keeping a census of Jewish citizens wasn't exactly a priority for medieval Spain. On the low end, some historians think it was tens of thousands, though others think it could have been as many as 1 million. Regardless, it seems that most of Spain's Jews decided to stick around and agreed to become Catholics. But not all Jews handled the transition the same way. Some weren't very religious to start with, so changing creeds wasn't such a hard choice given the alternative. These types of converts became known as New Catholics. Others were determined to practice their Judaism in secret. They were called Marranos, but today that's generally considered a derogatory term, and the phrase crypto-Jews has become more popular. In Hebrew, both groups are called Anusim, which means people who are forced to abandon their Judaism, and in English they are known as conversos, literally people who converted. Regardless of the name, back in the 1400s, the Spanish Inquisition and later Spanish policies had one goal when it came to Judaism: eliminate it. At the same time, Spain ramped up its colonization of the Americas. Over the next 4 centuries, millions of Spaniards arrived on the shores of the New World. Even though the government tried to restrict the movement of conversos, it was really difficult to keep track of them, since they were, after all, Catholics now.
1579. The Pacific Ocean, off the coast of South America. A ship on a mission that launches a new age of piracy. Small, fast, armed with 18 cannons. At the helm, an Englishman, Francis Drake. Farmer's son, fearless navigator, and the most successful pirate in history. In his sights, a Spanish galleon, loaded with a metal so valuable, it will change the world. Drake's secret partner in crime is the English Queen, Elizabeth I.
Drake was given letters of reprisal, signed by the British Crown, which meant that he could go and raid Spanish shipping. What he did was piracy.
He's already plundered over 70 Spanish ships. The King of Spain has put a price on his head. $10 million today. Dead or alive. The Spanish ship, the Cacafuego, heads for the coast of Panama with the most valuable cargo ever seen at sea. In its hold, 26 tons of silver from the Americas, worth $30 million today. Barrels thrown off the stern slowed Drake's ship down. 220 tons of silver mined each year. Potosi becomes the busiest industrial complex in the world. In each year, in 3 giant furnaces, the Spanish mint 2.5 million silver coins. Pesos de ocho, pieces of 8, the world's first universal currency. Silver becomes the key to mankind's prosperity.
These Spanish coins are seen everywhere in the world. They unite the world in a web of commerce.
A single coin worth the equivalent of $80 today. Legal tender in the USA until 1857. The scroll and pillars of the Spanish royal crest inspires one of the world's most potent symbols, the dollar sign.
The result is extraordinary. The entire world's economy is affected as this silver just explodes out of the Americas, crosses the Pacific, crosses into Europe, and there's an enormous burst of prosperity. This is the true beginning of globalization.
Spanish fleets ship 50,000 tons of silver out of the Americas, creating a new Atlantic trade.
Suddenly we have mass quantities coming onto the market, which is going to really transform all of European trade. And what we see is a whole new booming economy in Europe.
New trading centers rise. Seville, Lisbon, London, and on the coast of a small new country, the Netherlands, the world's richest and busiest trading city. Amsterdam, 1639. A city flush with new money. A century after the Spanish conquest of the New World, the riches of the Americas and an explosion of global trade have turned the Netherlands into the richest nation on the planet. The Dutch control over half the world's shipping. More new millionaires than anywhere else on Earth. The highest income per head in Europe. A city in love with gambling. Caught up in the excitement, Jan van Hoyen. Struggling artist, looking for a new way to make his fortune.
In a wealthy city, a city of great merchants and great enterprises, he's a guy on the move. And he wants to get in on this action.
New wealth drives the demand for new luxuries. And one exotic import has captured the public's imagination: the tulip. Imported from Turkey, The patterns of the most exotic tulips are created by a virus that attacks only some bulbs, making them rare and hard to cultivate. Today, a tulip bulb sells for about 50 cents. But in Holland in 1636, the rarest bulbs are selling for 100 times their weight in gold. Amsterdam's merchants are inventing new ways of making money. The birth of speculation. In the back rooms of taverns, tulip merchants sell not flowers or bulbs, but the rights to next year's harvest. The world's first futures market.
Today, all agricultural products are sold at futures markets. You can buy crops that have not been harvested yet. Similarly, tulips were bought in advance of their delivery date.
In 1 month in November 1636, the price of tulip shares has quadrupled. Van Hoyen sees an opportunity.
Until now, if you weren't nobility or you weren't a great merchant, you weren't wealthy. But here's a chance for the common people to become wealthy.
Confident of a quick return, Van Hoyen invests all his savings in tulip shares. By the beginning of December, the price of tulip bulbs reaches 10 times their price a month before. A bubble has started to inflate. By December 12th, the price doubles again. At an auction in nearby Leiden, the 7 penniless orphans of an innkeeper pin their hopes for the future on their dead father's small collection of tulip bulbs. In less than an hour, each child earns 40 times the annual income of an average craftsman. Ten 10% of all Americans today are descended from these first 50 pioneers. Within 100 years, they found great trading cities that rival those of Europe. Charleston, Philadelphia, New York, Boston. 50 pioneers who turned their back on a world devoted to making money, lay the foundations of the United States, the greatest trading nation of the future.
Hey guys, if you want to watch more clips, click here.
And if you want to watch the full podcast, click right here.